Welcome back. We are back with a part two. This is my first part two to a conversation
Wow.
that I've had on this podcast.
Honored.
So you're a first, Garrett.
Thank you. Really, it's a part three, considering
Yeah,
our
considering the fact that
first
we had to
secret,
scrap them. That's true.
never posted.
That's true.
Secret episode.
That is a good point. This is actually a part three. But yeah, so the conversation that we had concerning liberal racism, or quote unquote nice racism, as Robin DiAngelo coined it. It's such a vast topic and something that it's kind of difficult to fully express through just an hour. So we had to come to a part two, and also I texted Garrett and I was like, man, I am so excited for this part two because I'm reading this book called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And she had these themes and these ideas in this book that kind of changed my perspective and that I thought could change the perspective of a lot of people out there, because I'm pretty sure people will hear our first conversation and they are, there will be people that kind of say, I'm not racist, even
Right.
from the conversation we had. But this book kind of puts things in perspective to kind of understand why even quote unquote people who would call themselves nice are still in this system of racism. And after I finish reading, you can call it a system of casteism. When you think of a caste society, usually people think of India or Nazi Germany. But through this book, you learn quickly that America has a caste system also. So I'm going to read this passage, a couple of passages actually. So the first part of this conversation will be me reading from this book that everybody should read called Caste. It should be required reading. So let's get to it. So she says, what is the difference between racism and casteism? Because caste and race are interwoven in America, it can be hard to separate the two. Any action or institution that mocks, harms, assumes, or attaches inferiority or stereotype on the basis of the social construct of race can be considered racism. Any action or structure that seeks to limit, hold back, or put someone in a defined ranking seeks to keep someone in their place by elevating or denigrating that person on the basis of their perceived category can be seen as casteism. Casteism is the investment in keeping the hierarchy as it is in order to maintain your own ranking, advantage, privilege, or to elevate yourself above others or keep others beneath you. For those in the marginalized caste, casteism can mean seeking to keep those on your disfavored rung from gaining on you, to curry the favor and remain in the good graces of the dominant caste, all of which serve to keep the structure intact. In the United States, racism and casteism frequently occur at the same time or overlap or figure into the same scenario. Casteism is about positioning and restricting those positioned. Is it vis-a-vis? Is that how you pronounce it?
Vis-a-vis.
Vis-a-vis? Yeah. Others. What race and its precursor, racism, do extraordinarily well is to confuse and distract from the underlying structural and more powerful Sith Lord of caste. Like the cast on a broken arm, like the cast in a play, a caste system holds everyone in a fixed place. For this reason, many people, and this is what our conversation is about, including those we might see as kind and good people, could be castes, meaning invested in keeping the hierarchy as it is, are content to do anything or to do nothing to change it, but not racist in the classical sense, not active and openly hateful of this or that group. Actual racists, actual haters would be, by definition, castes, as their hatred demands that those they perceive as beneath them know and keep their place in the hierarchy. In everyday terms, it is not racism that prompts a white shopper in a clothing store to go up to a random black or brown person who is also shopping and to ask for a sweater in a different size, or for a white guest at a party to ask a black or brown person who is also a guest to fetch them a drink, as happened to Barack Obama, as a state senator or even perhaps a judge to sentence a subordinate caste person for an offense for which a dominant caste person might not even be charged. It is caste, or rather the policing of an adherence to the caste system. It is the unconscious, reflexive response to expectations from 1,000 imaging inputs and neurological societal downloads that affix people to certain roles based upon what they look like and what they historically have been assigned to, or the characteristics and what they historically have been assigned to. Oh, no, I read that again. Or the characteristics and stereotypes by which they have been categorized. No ethnic or racial category is immune to the messaging we all receive about the hierarchy, and thus no one escapes its consequences. What some people call racism could be seen as merely one manifestation of the degree to which we have internalized the larger American caste system, a measure of how much we ascribe to it and how deeply we uphold it, act upon it, and enforce it, often unconsciously, in our daily lives. I'm going to read that last part again because she says how deeply we uphold it, act upon it, and enforce it, often unconsciously, in our daily lives. We assume that the woman is not equipped to lead the meeting or the company or the country, or that a person of color or an immigrant cannot be the one in authority, is not a resident of a certain community, could not have attended a particular school or deserve to be attended a particular school. When we feel a pang of shock and resentment, a personal wounding, a sense of unfairness, and perhaps even shame at our discomfort upon seeing someone from a marginalized group in a job or car or house or college or appointment more prestigious than we have been led to expect. When we assume that the senior citizen should be playing cards rather than developing software, we are reflecting the person. We are reflecting the efficient encoding of caste, the subconscious recognition that the person has stepped out of his or her assumed place in our society. We are responding to our embedded instructions of who should be where and who should be doing what, the breaching of the structure and boundaries that are all hallmarks of caste. Race and caste are not the cause and do not account for every poor outcome or unpleasant encounter, but caste becomes a factor to whatever degree in interactions and decisions across gender, ethnicity, race, immigrant status, sexual orientation, age, or religion that have consequences in our everyday lives and in policies that affect our country and beyond. It may not be as all-assuming as its targets may perceive it to be, but neither is it in the ancient relic, the long-ago anarchies, the post-racialists, post-haters of everything, keep wishing away. Its invisibility is what gives it power and longevity. Caste, along with its faithful servant race, is an X factor in most any American equation, and any answer one might ever come up with to address our current challenges is flawed without it. When I read that, it just blew my mind. Because before and often we have these conversations, and this book so far, I haven't even finished it yet, is letting me know that our conversations are not digging deeper enough into the structure of this country. So what was your thoughts about what I just read?
No notes. Perfect. Let's shut it down. Let's
Yeah.
get out of here. Easy day for me.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of good points there,
Mhm.
especially related to the first conversation we had, because I think I mentioned to you before, it's not even something like I, as someone who tries to be conscious about this stuff, thinks about that much, because generally my focus is always on material conditions and
Right.
government actions that have specifically disenfranchised people that result in the wealth gap we have today, and anything just related to material conditions of different groups of people today. But I mean, it clearly another part of the puzzle, and it reminds me of the tweet I sent you the other day, where it was like a thread of Black people listing their experiences working at Google
Right.
or other big tech companies, and
Mhm.
so many of the stories were riding his bike across the Google campus and somebody reported him saying there was somebody that shouldn't have been on campus. Or
Right. And that speaks to what she described as seeing somebody
Right.
outside of the context that, or seeing somebody outside of the image that you had in your mind of where they should be.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the relevant thing there is, when we talk about racism, the reason that this is such a big problem, or as I guess you and Robin DiAngelo may agree, may be racism that affects Black Americans today, or does more damage than more outright overt racism, is because it's probably not that often that Black people are going to interact with KKK members or true white supremacists,
right.
just psychos. Whereas every day at work or at school or anywhere, you're going to be interacting with normal people who view racism as black and white, good and evil, and so they may have this software kind of operating, this Castis software operating underneath the surface that they're not really aware of, and so they have no idea what impacts that's having, what they're projecting onto others,
right?
Without being aware,
right. And another reason I love this book is because the way she frames the way she frames people wanting to hold on to status. You know what I mean? She even put in the book how, a lot of people that would be grouped under the term white, because it's not, white is not a real thing. It's just an idea of being white. So you had, the Irish, who were the Black people where they came from, the lower caste,
right?
Where they came from. You had Irish people, you had all Italians, you had all these people coming over here, and everybody was trying to get into the dominant caste, so they wanted to be considered what is known to be white. You know what I mean? So, and I love how she painted that to show how people would do anything just to hold on to that status. Speaking of the Irish people that I was just speaking about, where they came from, they experienced some of the things, as far as being the lower class, that African Americans experienced here in America. But when they started coming over to America, they saw, okay, in order for me to rise to the dominant caste, I have to treat these people just like the dominant caste treat them. And so it's like you lose all sense of perspective, just to fit into this caste. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it does remind me of, it was some lecture, and I think a comedian said something too, and it was just like asking all the white people in the room, it's like, how many of you would be like perfectly okay if you woke up tomorrow and you were Black? And it was just like, you can immediately, like, just thinking about that.
Chris Rock said this.
Okay, yeah.
No, not that. I don't know if he said something to that degree, but he was like, there's not a white person in this room that would switch places with me.
Right.
And I'm rich.
Right, yeah. And yeah, so that kind of makes it more glaringly obvious, like, what you don't want to see or think about. And I think there is some of that working in everybody that we don't want to talk about. Like, even those of us that are aware, like, we're living on land that was, like, stolen from indigenous people, and, this, especially, like, in the South, like, most of the country was built up through slavery and through, specific legal, like, government incentives that created this white middle class and white upper class that very specifically left Black people out, through the land grants and GI Bill. I mean, we could talk for hours about it, as we did on the first podcast. But I think behind that, even people that understand that, they say, okay, that's true, but I have it now, and I don't want to give it back.
Right.
And so, and I feel that way, like, I don't know. So it's
exactly. So I'm gonna read another passage, and this section of the book is called "The Evil of Silence." For a lot of black people, and myself included, when we form these relationships with white people and something happens and you hear nothing, it's kind of like discouraging. It's, because we would want you to speak up in those situations. And, now with all this, police brutality going on, and that stuff was like really popping. And when George Floyd, and so when you're on social media and you see some of the things that people are saying, like I said in the first episode that we did, it's kind of like, whoa. So, and again, she's going to frame this. Actually, I'm gonna read a couple because she did a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna read two. And she shows how people are just more concerned with being comfortable at the end of the day, pretty much, in the dominant caste. So she says, in the middle of Main Street in a Southern American town, there stood a majestic old tree, an elm or an oak or a sycamore that had been planted before modern roads were paved. It held a sacred place in the hearts of the townspeople, though it was an altogether inconvenient location for a shade tree. It blocked traffic coming and going, and motorists were forced to curve around it to get through town. It was the potential cause of many accidents, given that motorists could not always see past it or know for sure what had the right of way. And yet it could not be cut down. It was the local lynching tree, and it was performing its duty to perpetually and eternally remind the black townspeople of who among them had last been hanged from its limbs and who could be next. The tree was awaiting its appointed hour, and the white townspeople were willing to risk inconvenience, injury, and death, even to themselves, to keep the tree and the subordinate caste in their places. The tree bore silent witness to black citizens of their eternal lot, and in doing so, it whispered reassurances to the dominant caste of theirs. The craziest line out of this is, the white townspeople were willing to risk inconvenience, injury, and death, even to themselves, to keep the tree and the subordinate caste in their places. So hold on, are you thinking of some stuff? Hold on, I'm gonna read the second one,
right,
which is crazy. You know what I mean? And in the second one, it really brings home just how the level of evil. Because I think in some people's psyche, they say, oh, slave masters were bad. Some people, they concede that. But everyday people were horrible,
right,
at this time. And people don't think like that. So, okay, here. The little girls appeared to be in grade school in light cotton dresses with a sailor's collar and their hair cut in precise page boys just below their ears. In the picture, the two younger girls seemed to be fidgeting in shadow, close to the women in the group who were perhaps their mothers or aunts. The girl you notice first, though, looks to be about 10 years old, positioned at the front of the group of grown-ups and children, her eyes alert and riveted. A man is at her side, crisp in his tailored white pants, white shirt, and white Panama hat, as if headed to cocktail hour at a boating party, his arms folded, face at rest, unperturbed, vaguely bored. It is June 19th, 1935. They are all standing at the base of a tree in the pine woods of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Above them hangs the limp body of Reuben Stacy, his overalls torn and bloodied, riddled with bullets, his hands cuffed in front of him, head snapped from the lynching rope, killed for frightening a white woman. The girl in the front is looking up at the dead black man with wonderment rather than horror, a smile of excitement on her face as if show ponies had just galloped past her at the circus. The fascination on her face, set against the gruesome nature of the gathering, was captured by a photographer and is among the most widely circulated of all lynching photographs of 20th century America. Lynchings were part carnival, part torture chamber, and attracted thousands of onlookers who collectively became accomplices to public murder. Photographs were tipped off in advance and installed portable printing presses at the lynching sites to sell to lynchers and onlookers like photographs at a prom. They made postcards out of the gelatin prints for people to send to their loved ones. People mailed postcards of the severed, half-burned head of Will James atop a pole in Illinois in 1907. They sent postcards of burned torsos that looked like the petrified victims of, um, not even gonna try to pronounce that. Only these horrors had come at the hands of human beings in modern times. Some people framed the lynching photographs with locks of the victim's hair under glass if they had been able to secure any. One spectator wrote on the back of his postcard from Waco, Texas in 1916, "This is the barbecue we had last night. My picture is to the left with the cross over it. Your son, Joe." This was singularly American. Now, people, listen to what I'm about to read. Even the Nazis did not stoop to selling souvenirs of Auschwitz, wrote Time magazine many years later. Lynching postcards was so common, a form of communication in the turn of the 20th century America, that lynching scenes became a burgeoning subdepartment of the postcard industry. By 1908, the trade had grown so large, and the practice of sending postcards featuring the victims of mob murderers had become so repugnant that the U.S. Postmaster General banned the cards from the mails. But the new edict did not stop Americans from sharing their lynching exploits. From then on, they merely put the postcards in an envelope. That was 1935 when those stories happened. My great-grandfather was born in 1935. My great-grandmother was born in 1940, and she's still alive right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
well,
it's just... yeah.
What strikes me is just the mentioning the Nazis. At the end of that is in pre-1930s Germany.
Right.
The Nazi Party, around the conversations they were having around the government that they were creating, the society they wanted to build, is they took a lot of notes from the way the American government treated
This
Black
is in this
Americans.
book.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go. And so I'm sure I've read that or heard it on a podcast at some point. And
they didn't even go as far.
No, they did. I remember one of the
America
big debates
did.
was, should interracial marriage be illegal?
Right.
Which it was in the United States.
Yes, he
in
talks
the
about this book
1940s,
in this book.
in about half the states.
Right.
And so,
yes.
Again, we view, yes, the Nazis were bad guys. We were good guys. We came and liberated Europe. But, at that time, interracial marriage was
it's
illegal
a way,
in something like half the states.
Yes, it's a way to uphold casteism. The class. It's the caste.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's a way to uphold that caste.
Yeah.
So, in reading this, we can have this conversation about, which I said is one of the keys in the first episode, is education. Like, it's if you're serious about the work and you read something like this, it's going to affect you. But the problem is, most white people don't know these things. Me, I'm Black, and I'm still learning things. You know what I mean? Like, I just learned about, the Nazis studying America on how to control the Jews. Like, they literally studied America.
Right.
And if you talk to a lot of Americans, Nazi Germany was like, it was just horrible. They speak of it as horrible, but wait, you have all this patriot. I'm not saying you should be patriotic, but you have this view of America that's so great, but the people that you're condemning studied America.
Right.
So we can, talk about education. And I just saw this tweet. It was like, the reason I know I screenshot it. I'm gonna get it. You can say your thoughts in the meantime, but I'll find it.
Okay. Yeah, you go ahead and look. And I think we talked about this last time too. I think part of that is, especially like conservatives, but white people in general, kind of view themselves as racially neutral. Like,
right.
They don't, whether they think that or not, it's kind of a subconscious feeling. And so we don't feel like we participate in identity politics in the way that, liberals do, or, Black or Hispanic or indigenous Americans. So we don't see ourselves as doing that. But one of the things I've noticed recently on Twitter is like conservative Americans posting clips of like, Australia is in some intense lockdown again for COVID. And so videos of like police being like very aggressive towards people not wearing masks. And they're like, can you believe this fascism? This is totalitarianism.
Yeah.
And like, to me,
mind-blowing, right?
these are the same people, because it
hypocrites.
made me want to I don't get involved in anything
Yeah.
on Twitter because it's just a mess. But it made me want to comment like, wait, let's see the whole video first. Wait, why didn't they just comply?
Right.
You know, it was like, where is
Exactly.
all that? Why aren't you backing the blue? Like,
Right.
And it's because in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
they see their identity. They see themselves as,
Right.
I'm an anti-masker or anti-vaxxer or
Right.
whatever it is. So they see that affecting them, and so
Mhm.
that is their identity politics then expressing itself.
Exactly.
But it's just it's so hard to bend the mirror enough so they see their face in it.
Yeah. It's I'm gonna take a break right quick because I really gotta pee.
Okay.
I drink a lot of water.
Pause.
Right back. I'll be right back.
All right. Do you want me to keep talking, or are you gonna pause the?
I mean, you got no.
All right.
All right. So the tweet was, I found it.
Okay, good.
The tweet was, the number one reason why America never learns from its history is because America never teaches its real history. So, and you think about Germany and how they've been able to progress, it's because they did a lot of work to understand, and they were very upfront about the history. They tore down Nazi monuments, and I think that's the reason that they've been able to kind of get past their history, is because they did the work. I mean, and pay reparations, you know.
Right.
So I think that's something that America could really learn from.
Yeah, and we talked about that on the first one too.
Yeah.
Because it's not like anyone has the impression that you can be forgiven for something like the
Mhm.
Holocaust or slavery. No, it's about what can we
Mm-hmm.
can we fix going forward to create the society we want to live in. And so Germany did a full mea culpa denazification of its country,
Right.
and paid reparations,
Mhm.
importantly, and that's something that our country never really went through, say with like the Confederacy. I mean, flying the Confederate flag was still a big issue a few years ago,
Yeah.
and maybe just by luck of my parents or where I grew up, that never made any sense to me.
Mhm.
And I definitely learned that yes, the Confederacy were like the bad guys in the story, and so,
Right.
it is strange to see this like attachment to that symbol still, like in
Mhm.
so much of the South.
Right.
But I forget the track we were on earlier with the conversation.
No, I was just viewers. I had to take a restroom break, but no, we were just basically saying about. I think we kind of transitioned to the history part, but and thinking about the casteism that she's talking about and how white people have a certain perception of what a black man or a black person, period, where they should be. The story she gave of somebody mistaking, at that time, Senator Obama as a bartender at a party, because to them, he's out of place, right? So I think that and that awareness of that for me is the reason why, in part, this show exists. Because I could be doing comedy. I'm pretty funny, I think. I could be doing a lot of things that would put me in my quote unquote stereotypical lane, right? And so in high school, Al and my friend Al, we were, the two, most popular kids in school. And a large part of that was because of our personality. We MC pep rallies. We entertain everybody, right?
Right.
So when I left, high school, and I went to college, and I'm taking the African American Studies class. I'm taking a class on the history of Latino history. All this in a linguistic anthropology class, and to me, I'm getting real smart, right? So I was like, I want to show this side more than I would want to show my comedic side or my entertainer side, because, and this could be me overthinking, but this is society, right? But I'm just thinking, I just want to show something other than what's quote unquote expected of me. Right. Because for the longest time, in order for a black person to escape, not fully escape, but kind of escape the casteism of them being the lower class, is through entertainment. Slaves would make slave owners would make slaves, get up and perform, no matter how tired they were, no matter, they worked them 18 hours a day, get up and sing, get up and do this. And for the longest, that's how, Jay-Z has a lyric. He says, all us blacks have is sports and entertainment until we even, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like that has been still probably one of the most dominant ways to get out of the casteism. But even when you do, quote unquote, get out, you're still meant to stay in your place. I hear a lot, about athletes being paid an X amount of money, so they need to shut up. Or, you got the LeBron James shut up and dribble, Laura Ingram
Right.
comment. And Elijah Muhammad has this quote that says, you can never get past the conditions of your race. Barack Obama, probably the most educated president in history, one of the best orators in history, held that office just superb as far as no scandals, a united front with his family. And to some people, he was nothing more than a nigga.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you can never rise above the conditions of your people, or as the book would say, your caste.
Yeah, and I do think that kind of influences what you talked about, the invisibility of that caste system, is because when I grew up, for example, all of the biggest cultural figures that I looked up to were all Black Americans. Every day when I got home from school, what was on the TV was Oprah. Who was the biggest athlete? Michael Jordan. My favorite actor, the best actor, Denzel Washington. Tiger Woods, just a singular phenomenon of talent. And then getting into high school, really the first president I had when I started thinking about politics was Barack Obama. And so, it was like seeing, Black faces in high places, and it was, that to me was signal. Yeah, I mean, there's racism is over then. And we don't.
They even coined that term when Obama won, the post-racial society.
Right, and we don't, we don't think about, okay, what's the actual makeup of, say, like, the C-suite of Fortune 500 companies, or the rest of government, or the Supreme Court, or Congress. The actual people are confused what the actual power centers of the country are, and Barack Obama, it should be really a big flag for the opposite case in that, as you mentioned, and I have, I tried to qualify before, I have so many critiques of the Obama presidency, but from a left position of policy. But just on the aesthetics, I mean, picture perfect, handsome
flawless
family, one of the most dignified politician maybe I've seen.
And not only that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but not only that, the first lady, Harvard, did she go to Harvard? Yeah, Harvard.
Right.
Princeton.
Yeah.
VP of a hospital, lawyer.
Always.
Yeah.
Like always on point.
Right.
With, who she needs to be. And Barack Obama, one of the better speakers. And then you look who he's sandwiched between. Just two, absolute bumbling buffoons of, of like the most obvious kind of racial inequality that we have. The most disgusting.
That's a great point.
Views of white privilege. George Bush, just born into a rich political dynasty family. Donald Trump, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and both of them, just anytime they open their mouth, just sound like complete idiots. Donald Trump, anytime he opened his mouth, couldn't possibly further prove how little he knew about anything. Any given time.
You're making me think of something. In the book, when you remember when she said about when she was talking about that tree that it resulted in death,
right?
And she was like, white people would rather risk injury, risk death, in order to still see themselves as the dominant caste. You just made me think of this, right? So Obama was in office. He, in my estimation, tried to make for the first time in the country's history, make everybody feel like America was theirs. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or, how you see the people that he brought into the White House and people that would never get the chance to see the White House.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He made sure that they got that opportunity. And so.
And people hated him for it.
Exactly. And you see this African American president, and then you're up against, after, the possibility of a female being the president.
Mm-hmm.
And now the dominant caste is like, whoa, what about us? We're about to lose our position in this caste system. So what did they do? They have this guy, Trump. He's speaking their language. He's speaking, hey, if you vote for me, I'm going to make sure you stay in the dominant caste. And they would risk anything just to feel that they were in the dominant caste. So you just made me think of that.
Right, and I'm not letting Democrats off the hook at all,
You
or
shouldn't.
liberals, because
Right.
then
That's exactly what this
who
this
did-
podcast
we just
is talking
followed it
about.
up with another bumbling white buffoon who has never, had to earn anything.
Right.
And when you look at that final
Buffoon.
field of
Mm-hmm.
like Democratic candidates in the primary, it was entirely, it comes down to, at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
we picked, another 70, 80-year-old white man,
Right.
who again did not display any capability of being able to do the job.
Yeah.
Other than being a white man who,
Yeah.
either consciously or not, we
Mhm.
associate with the office of the presidency for
Right.
obvious reasons. And even the crazy thing about the hate Obama got is, a lot of my criticisms of him are from the left, because he did so much conceding to try and win those people over. The reason he probably picked Joe Biden as his vice president to begin with was
Right.
as
'Cause he's white.
his first concession to
Yeah.
moderates, and
Yeah.
and then just going from there, all the compromises made along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Even during the Black Lives Matter protests, when he had some Black Lives Matter leaders at the White House, or he gave a speech at the Dallas police officer's funeral after there was a shooter that shot, I think, 6 police officers, and Barack Obama spoke at their funeral. And I read it. I mean, it almost brought me to tears. It was like some of the most beautifully written, and again, throughout the speech, he's constantly reinforcing that the police are the best of us, and
Right.
are
Kinda
are
straddling-
here to protect us. And then
Yeah.
just a little bit threw in, let's also consider again, just these tiny breadcrumbs of why there's criticism around the way Black people experience policing. And so I immediately think this is a perfect speech. And then you just go online or you talk to anybody who is moderate or to the right, and I just heard he's a socialist, he's the worst person you've ever heard. This speech was some
Even though the speech was even, you said, he was speaking to both sides.
it wasn't even.
Yeah.
Even. I mean,
Yeah.
he I think properly recognized he was at a funeral, and
Right.
99% was pure.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking from the heart and honoring
Right.
the people that had died. And then just the 1% of it was just addressing the elephant in the room around the shooting.
Right.
And it was, the way that it was perceived by so many people, then I was just okay, so there's nothing he could do then, short of, and honestly, one of my criticisms of him was trying too hard to win these people
Right.
over, and it could, because it just felt like there's nothing. They're going to call you a socialist no matter what you do,
Right.
even though his universal health care plan turned out to be, some weird private health insurance scheme that
Yeah.
I'm sure helped some small amount of people, but was nothing close to what a lot of us on the left really hoped for as a path to universal health care.
Right.
But it's no matter what you do, they're going to call you a socialist, or they're going to call you these things, because it's not about policy for them. It's about fighting this culture war and maintaining this caste system.
Yes. I said that, with nice racism, right?
Mhm.
You know, people that don't care would come out and basically say why they're saying what they're saying. But a lot of the times, it's color blindness. You know what I mean? It's like even with the war on drugs, right? If you're reading like the actual words in these laws, it's colorblind.
Right.
There's no like black people getting this, blah blah. Blah. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard, and you drive yourself crazy. You know, trying to debate somebody who is adamant on just not understanding anything and just saying you're crazy. And it's kind of hard to debate because it's so colorblind, and like you said, it's so interwoven in our culture
Right.
that it just is what it is. You know what I mean? So
Right.
then you have to go into like black people smoke crack at that time and white people smoke cocaine. Obviously, there's a great disparity between the two, sentencings between the two and blah blah. But there could still be like, oh, you're making stuff up. You know what I mean? So it's the color blindness is wild. Like
Yeah,
and it's genius.
I mean, at the same time,
evil genius.
It's. I don't think anyone doubts the fact that white people do drugs just as much as black people do, but
Right.
there's no FBI or police operation setting up stings in white suburbs,
Exactly.
looking for trying to pull over every
Mhm.
kid they find, searching their cars, and slapping these misdemeanors or jail time or even worse, like these trials that for people that can't afford a lawyer and then can't afford to pay bail, can't afford
Right.
to get this off their record, and so these things compound. But that kind of gets us into what you thought about talking about, but we decided a little bit against was
Mhm.
like critical race theory, which gets turned into this big monster.
Mhm.
A lot of that is literally just related to what you're talking about, is finding ways that, for example, like a law that isn't racist in its writing
Mhm.
has different effects on different racial groups.
Mhm.
And first of all, that's not being taught to kids in high school, and shouldn't be, because they can't. So much of that they can't understand. Because I saw these like Fox News, they make these big nightmares about they're teaching critical race theory to our kids, and it's like, no, critical race theory is like a college, like university master's,
Very
PhD
complex,
level.
like,
like I said, I tried to listen to a real lecture on it from
Yeah.
like a university professor. I couldn't understand it because I didn't understand half the words she was saying.
Right.
But that is what it's related to, is
Mhm.
like viewing how society and norms and laws have disparate racial effects that we don't account for as long as it's not in
Right.
the writing of the law.
And this nice racism thing has been going on forever. If you look at certain abolitionists, didn't necessarily view black people as equals. They just didn't. They just believe slavery is a little bit too harsh. Not that they were like on our level. Like, we just think that's a little bit too far, guys. Maybe we should Or people look at the North, right, and be like, oh, they were so progressive.
Right.
When you might could eat in a restaurant in the North, but they were there. This is a real story. The waitress used to make a thing out of smashing the glass after a black person had drank out of it.
Mm-hmm.
To show, because there's this thing like don't touch. White parents used to scrub their kids' hands if they shook hands with a black kid. In this book, there's the story of this kid who was the only black kid on a little league baseball team. They won the championship, and his coaches, probably not thinking, took them to a pool, right? And race is so interwoven in our society. I'm just thinking of how the fact that stereotypically black people don't mess with water like that. This could be this story could be a part of that, and even going back to slavery, when slaves like, hey, I'll jump out this ship before I be somebody's slave. You know what I mean? So there used to be a thing to where it's laws against black people swimming in the same pool as white people. So this kid, just imagine this, and it's kind of heartbreaking when you think of it. But imagine just winning a championship with your teammates, right? To celebrate the championship, you guys go to a local pool. So as you and your teammates are entering the gate, the lifeguards say, whoa, he can't come in here. And so your white coaches protest, like, hey, man, come on, just let him in here. It's not that big of a deal, blah, 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 blah. And so they was like, we can't do that, but he can sit outside the gate. So imagine you're watching your friends enjoy the pool, and you have to sit outside the gate and watch this. And then, the coaches keep pleading, and the lifeguard says, okay, we'll allow him in the pool for a couple of minutes, but no white person can be in this pool. True story. This is true story. No white person can be in this pool while he's in the pool. So they make every parent, coach, and white child get out of the pool. So this black kid, I don't even think they let him get in the pool. He just walked or circled around the pool, and they told him, do not touch the water.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But most people don't know this. And I think schooling and education can do so much in shaping the young minds.
Yeah.
The young minds. And it's not even like, yes, kids at that age, growing up are not, then they can't fully comprehend critical race theory. But what they can comprehend is not only hearing about slaves and Martin Luther King when it comes to social studies or the history class, because subconsciously for the white child and the black child, and every race in between, if all you hear growing up in your history class about black people is slavery and Martin Luther King, subconsciously, that's how you're going to view black people, as subordinate, lesser than, slavery, struggle. That's what you're going to see them as. And as a black person, you're going to see yourself like that when there is so much brilliance that can be taught in when you cover black history in America. But we choose to tell these half-truths. I'm reading these books, and I'm just thinking about the stuff I learned in social studies, and we learned about all these compromises, right? All these compromise this, to compromise that, and all of these compromises were centered around slavery. We learned about the Civil War in school. They told us it was about states' rights. It's literally about keeping black people enslaved.
Right, yeah.
And
states' rights to do what?
Yeah, exactly. So they're telling these half-truths to make America look great, and they're also telling these stories about black people. And even in some textbooks, they said they didn't even call them slaves, they called them indentured servants. What?
Right.
And so if you keep pacifying history and telling half-truths, you're doing a disservice, and we'll never, like that quote said, the reason America can't get past its history, or racial history, is because it doesn't teach its racial history.
Right. I think, as far as indentured servants, I mean, that was just a totally separate category offered to white Europeans.
Yeah,
saying,
exactly.
Hey, if you work for 5 years, then we'll pay for your trip to America.
Exactly.
But, after that, not experiencing the kind of racial apartheid that, then would exist in the country for the next century and more.
Exactly.
I was losing my train of thought, getting lost in your your monologue.
Yeah.
I think as far as teaching real history in schools, it's important not our attention spans and the time we have to think about these issues as adults feels like so little, especially for, again, white liberals who, it's too much to think about at one time, and so we get swept up in the culture war bullshit that happens on mainstream media or social media,
Right.
Because that's what it's meant to do, so that our politicians don't actually have to do anything helpful for us, as long as they get us. They're the bad team because they believe in whatever this bullshit is, and they're the bad team because they believe in this, rather than hey, what are we going to do about healthcare or climate change or things like that? And so one of those things recently, for some reason, became critical race theory.
Right.
Even though critical race theory has been around for, 40 or 50 years, being taught, being something you could learn in university. But, if you turn on Fox News, they'll say they're teaching, all white kids, you're racist, and everyone is either colonizer or oppressed, and they want you to hate America. And one, like they couldn't like further demonstrate how little they know about what critical race theory even means. But also,
Right.
as I said, that's not what's being taught to kids because that's an advanced level course. Critical theory in general is advanced level
For an
studies.
adult.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about like common sense, like let's teach real history to kids in schools because we're so our propaganda sensors are so finely tuned when it comes to Chinese media or Russian media or North Korean media.
Right.
And yet we don't think about that ever happening to us. Whereas, that's, of course it does. That's I'm sure every country does that. And so it's, everything that we learn in school is from the lens of America and more specifically from like the white
perspective.
The white American through the centuries. And so it's not about hating America or, again, like every white person like interrogating their own racism. It's learning true history and understanding why things are the way they are today.
Right.
And, you can't do that without understanding every level of, I mean, I know you want to also teach like more like actual black excellence throughout the centuries.
Yeah.
That is often hidden, which is important too, but I'm like so interested in teaching like the specific things like our government has done and society has done that has resulted in the caste system that we have now.
Right.
Beyond just people are just making racism's over and people are making bad choices. And
I really think that a lot of people don't really know. Like they know slavery, they know Jim Crow era, but they don't know the housing discrepancies we were talking about, or or like when black people did get loans, they were predatory, and they don't know any of this. They don't know any of this, any of that. They don't know how. We look at one of the
New Deal policies that were...
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say that. You look at the New Deal was great. But hey, it did not include black people. And the people really don't know. Yep. You know what I mean? Because why would you have to know? It's not a part of your life. So I want to read this right quick. This is out of Nice Racism by Robin DiAngelo. She said, I asked social justice consultant and author Anika Naila, a black and indigenous woman who identifies as a woman of the global majority, about her thoughts on white niceness. She brought Castagno's observations to life in her reply, explaining that white nice functions as a kind of shield against being touched or moved in the face of racism, a shield that actually made it more dangerous for her, especially if you have direct power over any aspect of my life. Anika shared her lived experience and broke down the impact of white niceness from two directions: when it is expected of her and when it comes at her. She shared the following list with me. This is when you want me to be nice as a black person. A white person would mean don't talk about race, don't cause conflict, don't say anything that might upset me or other white people I care about, don't be direct, don't tell me what you really think, tell me I'm a good person, smile, be friendly, don't cause me to feel anything, don't pressure me to take action or own something I did, don't defend yourself against my racism lest you be seen as a bitter, angry person, don't name my racism. And when you're being nice as a white person, you believe that means you can't possibly be racist, set me up as the mean black person if I call you on your racism, smile as a shield against genuine vulnerability, assume that your whiteness / white space is comfortable for me, are just being quote unquote professional and following the quote unquote rules because quote unquote nice people don't make waves. Think it's not fair that I'm not being nice back. You included me. Why am I not granting you the benefit of the doubt that you're not racist? Justify not interrupting racism because you didn't want to hurt another white person's feelings at the expense of my feelings. Leave me to take risk and be vulnerable. Will objectively watch from a quote-unquote nice distance to learn what you and your people are feeling. Anika sees white niceness in the face of racism as a form of the plantation relationship. During the enslavement of Africans, white people didn't have to be nice. Black people, of course, did, but no pretense of niceness was needed on the part of white people. Today, that pretense is necessary to some degree, especially in order to qualify as a white progressive. But that doesn't mean that anti-blackness isn't simmering just below the surface, and black people are still required to be nice or risk punishment. Consider the case of a white woman calling the police when a group of black B&B guests did not behave nicely toward her. As they checked out and left the home, dragging luggage to their car, they were met by 7 police cars and told to put their hands in the air. They tried to explain to the officers that they were renting an Airbnb, but the officers didn't believe them and detained them for up to 45 minutes. Attorneys for the guest said a neighbor called authorities because they didn't return her wave or smile at her. As this story illustrates, the white smile is not without strings. It comes with an entitled expectation that there will be acknowledgement and gratitude for the white, quote-unquote, nod of approval. I am all for niceness in general. I don't enjoy mean people, and I am not advocating for white people to be unfriendly, but niceness is not anti-racism. Niceness does not indicate a lack of racism. It is not the solution to racism, nor does a culture of niceness indicate that racism is not present in the environment. The critique here is directed at white progressives who think that niceness means that they hold no racism and that it conveys that same meaning to others. Given that niceness is not a neutral, objective term, we might also reflect on what qualifies as not nice in the context of challenging racism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's heavy. We have a minute for closing thoughts.
Go ahead.
I keep getting. I'm entranced by your reading. And
I know you're digesting it, which is I want you people at home to do the same. Just take in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one important thing that she talks about, but I've thought as well, and something that there's this. He's a former Harvard professor, Dr. Cornel West. I don't know if you've heard him speak.
Brilliant man.
Brilliant,
yes.
And the way he speaks to you and brings you into the conversation, the way I just love how he calls everybody brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that also speaks to the way that Robin talks about what white people lose in this caste system, even if we are higher up in the caste system, how much we actually lose by maintaining the system to begin with, because even if they're not impossible barriers, there are still having these barriers in society to feeling this genuine connection to everyone around us, including our black brothers and sisters, or again, even other white Americans who may not be in our caste, or and again the I guess spiritual and emotional and every other kind of benefit you could imagine by maintaining this society in which not everybody has the same level of freedom to self-actualization and to fully express their talents and creativity and be themselves. And when this is maintained, it puts up that barrier. And as I mentioned, going into what feels like black spaces versus white spaces, and how this cloud of this invisible caste system or racism, it's operating in all of us all the time, and so it's hard to get past that to achieve. Now, just by luck, now, 5-10 of my absolute best friends, who I've spent probably the happiest moments of my life with, are all black Americans who, it couldn't have happened maybe 30 years ago, and, is still something that there's barriers for today, in that. I'm losing my train of thought. Let's cut this whole bit out.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it's hard for me to articulate it. It's something that I think about a lot, and how much we lose emotionally in not creating a better society in which everybody is free to, fully, have their needs met, but also express themselves without being constrained by these this niceness protocols that you just read off, or again, like having to worry about, like, is he going to call the police on me because I don't look like I belong on this Google campus?
Right.
I think that's my closing thoughts for now. I'll save the rest for parts 3, 4, and 5.
All right. So to just encapsulate what you just described, Fannie Lou Hamer said in 8 words, no one is free until everyone is free. So, guys, thank you for listening. Look, I know, I can only imagine, for a white person sitting here listening to all this, it might be kind of difficult to take in, but understand if you're really about the work of, progressing society, being an ally for your black friends, co-workers, employees, etc. These things are just vital, in order for us to grow in life, period. But specifically to this topic, you have to get uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable, because that's the only way that you will grow in life and also in this space. And lastly, I want to get these books. It's a lot of books. When this episode comes out, I'll be putting these books and some other books that I think are required reading, including one by Mr. Cornel West, on my book club page. Just get these books: Nice Racism by Rama D'Angelo, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. If you don't necessarily like reading, get the audio book or something, or watch some YouTube videos. Just do something. And just let's get to work. I'm very transparent. I've been very transparent in both of these episodes, but understand that it's just me telling the truth and doing what I think is necessary to move the conversation forward with the platform that I have. Garrett, thank you once again for coming on. And we're out. Peace.